Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to the assessment and accountability meeting on this Friday morning. It's good to see those of you who I can see. For folks, if anyone's watching, Ruth Wattenberg is also on the call in transit and will be on camera soon. And Jacques Patterson, the co-chair of the committee, needs to be off camera but is also present. So why don't we get started? Were there any updates besides, here, I'm gonna put the agenda in the chat actually, sorry, to start. But while I'm doing that, we're gonna start with discussion about the OSCE presentation and next steps between now and our next session with them in July. So if there are any other updates, now is a good time to bring them up, or questions or anything. Okay, seeing none. Any thoughts or questions or concerns following the meeting? We can start just with general discussion, and then I would like to talk specifically about this idea of getting a commitment from OSCE in some way. I drafted a letter as an idea. It's something we can talk about, but it doesn't have to be the way we do it if we do it. So that's sort of a very specific point of discussion. But were there general thoughts, ideas, questions, concerns about or takeaways from the discussion? Was it last week? Last Wednesday?
I think that is the main issue.
Okay. The main issue being that, can you say more?
Well, to get commitments about how the amendments will be, what they're, how the results of the MDF based on the new amendment are going to be presented, and what's going to happen in terms of the dashboard, and what's going to happen in terms of assistance. In other words, all the things that are in our resolution.
Right. Right. So so basically some of us feel that it would be difficult to vote yes on this amendment without a commitment that there will be action taken on most of the rest of our recommendations in the resolution. So
if I may real quick, Ruth, it speaks to the point that you and I originally talked to about that. Previously, when we did the task force, everybody kind of, when you guys voted on it and when I was on the task force, is that we did recommendations and nothing came of it. What we want to make sure is that that doesn't happen before now. I don't know the way that this is done. I've heard different ways that it's done. As I told leadership when I talked to them about it previously, was that being, new to this group and on the state board, I don't know what has to be done, and I definitely don't want Dr. Grant coming at us, thinking she's sideswiped or anything like that. But I do want to make sure, and I believe she's open to something. It's just we have to decide what that is, so that we do have a normal kind of way of making sure that they are delivering on the things that we wanted. If they're not going to give us all 12 right now, let's make sure that we're keep moving toward all of those 12s being accomplished in some way. So that was my thought process behind it. And hopefully it allows people who may be not voting in approval for this. But my thing is accountability, is making sure that we can hold them accountable for the things that were in the resolution at the appropriate time that it can be done in amendment or whatever the case may be. Okay.
Thank you for that, Representative Patterson. I also want to, so I put in the chat a link to a shared document That is the letter I'm proposing. So what I'm proposing with this letter, I'll give you a chance to open it up. But what I'm proposing is one way we get a written commitment is we actually write what our, concerns are or what we're expecting, and ask ASI to sign it. But in order to do that, we'd have to, make sure everybody on this committee thinks this is, in line with what we think ASI should commit to, and then share with the rest of the board and make sure that this is coming from the full board. So that would be the idea. As of now, yeah, I'll leave it there. I see your hand, John Paul.
Thanks. Yeah, so I have, I have some questions and thoughts, and I think this is exactly in line, Dr. Gasoy, what you were just saying about the making sure that ASI understands exactly where the state board is on these items that are not related to the amendment, but are related in process to the report card and to technical documents, and how we're going to do this in the long term and do a much better job, frankly, of supporting schools than the STAR framework ever did or was even accomplished by. I think it's unlikely to get the result that you're looking for through a letter like this. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think the first is like ASI's never going to sign it. Like they're never going to put themselves in a position where they are already saying we are going to do X, Y, Z before they've done public engagement on that thing. Now, whether or not we agree with the way that they do public engagement, that's a different argument. And I think that's also something that I would think the committee would want to discuss on, like, exactly what do we want them to do in that public engagement, and what do we want to be in control of as well. But I mean, if they did that, they would be opening themselves up to the argument that they have been, that the new report card is already pre-done and it's pre-baked and it's already designed, and so there's no point, that type of thing, and they're just not going to sign it. And I'm worried that if the state board goes forward with a letter type thing and a request like this, we're going to look impotent in terms of being able to use the limited leverage that the state board has. My suggestion would be that we include language in a resolution, in the approval resolution for the amendment, saying, remember, we have laid out specifically what we expect to see in the report card and that type of thing in SR 22-1. And just as a reminder, here they are. And this is what we expect. And we expect that the state superintendent has these in mind and brings them as part of her engagement work for the report card. And I think, I've put some language, I sort of was pondering this, and I took actually a significant amount of language from the letter and put it into some sort of, the basic form that it could be. And I think there's sort of two ways to do it. So I'm going to put this in the chat just because I think it'll be easier for everyone to see, but I can do it another way if there is another way. But for some reason I can't do that. I'll figure this out in a second. But I think the bullet points that are laid out in the letter are really important to have as starting points on this kind of discussion. And it isn't something that we should not use, but we have to figure out the way to use it in a way that's actually going to be effective for getting us to the place that we want, which is for ASI to pay attention to the recommendations that the state board is on record as making.
I see your hand, Representative Wattenberg. Representative Wattenberg.
Sorry. So I agree we have limited leverage. That's the part that I agree with what Director Hayworth just said. And how we use it is absolutely the right question. The problem with a resolution, I just want to say that is exactly what we've done in the past, and we've gotten exactly nothing in the past, multiple times on this issue. So I'm for doing a resolution, but that's just to be on the record. I don't think it's any leverage for us. What I do think is, I mean, here's what I do think our leverage is. We have in fact done engagement, and I think John Paul could speak to this. In many states, it is the board that does the engagement. That's who does the engagement, and the agency looks to the board to do the engagement. So I think the idea that OSSI can't sign off on this because they haven't done the engagement. What they need to do is just say, we've reviewed the engagement and we regard the board as kind of our surrogate for being out there doing the engagement. So I want to say that, and I think that's a normal way that a lot of boards act. And well, I'll leave it at that for now. But I mean, let me just say, and I think our leverage is to say that we can't vote for the amendment. And it's not clear to me why we would vote for the amendment if it didn't include anything. And that's something we can also come back to.
Thank you.
I see John Paul saying the SDA is actually required to do the engagement, but can't the engagement be conducted by the state board? Okay. Well, that's
not if they're not the SEA, which in a lot of states the state board is the SEA, and so they can do that. But here, OSSI is the SEA.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to clarify something about that, but I see Representative Reed's hand, so I'm going to go to you, Representative Reed.
Yes. So actually, my first question, is there a threshold for engagement, John Paul, or is just public engagement?
I mean, I think this is one of the challenges that we have both in DC and at the federal government, right? Is that they put these words in a lot of times and it's kind of spongy of what that means. But I think you're hitting on something that I think would be really fantastic actually, for the board to consider is, putting down some markers of the expectations of what the engagement on the report card would look like. I think that would be amazing. I think that would be the first time we've ever done anything like that. And it does align with some of our authorities in terms of parental and family engagement. Like having those standards, I think that falls very much within our statutory responsibilities.
Cool, that's helpful. But thank you. Going to the point about the amendment, I think it is key that I just started reading the red line 121 page amendment this morning. I'm only on page 19, so long way to go. But I think this is opportunity to get into, we're responding to what OSSI has showed us on a PowerPoint, and they're not going to submit that PowerPoint to the federal government. They're going to submit this plan to the federal government. I think it behooves us to dig into what they're actually sending to the federal government, because that's what the current vote is for. I believe the subsequent vote will be for how things are displayed, what are the levels of support, those kind of things. So I want to make sure that we are not diluting our current feedback and subsequently going to get dismissed because we're not targeting what is going to be voted on at the moment. So I do believe it's probably our best time or best use of our time to get into what are they submitting. One thing that caught my eye was I do see very direct deletion of park out of the amendment, and they're just saying statewide assessment. I think that's a move in the right direction. I still have questions about how, are we, and probably because I was asking questions and not fully listening, because it's hard to generate your question and listen at the same time to our meeting, but are we double dipping in categories? Will people be dinged, or would groups be dinged twice? Do we have any markers from the 85% that they want to get to current categories having 29% meets or exceeds expectations? So I'm not sure if we have some time, or we need to set some time to make sure that we are and also do some of the things that we're saying in our resolution, where appropriate, can we stick in here, so that's my kind of feedback.
Ruth, is that a hand or is that from before?
It's from before, but I also have another comment, but put me at the end of the list.
Okay. I was just going to say, let's see, a couple of things. One is, I think it's a yes and with digging into the actual amendment, because I mean, for obvious reasons, right? We should absolutely read it and be able to respond to it. The points in the letter are really about the report card and then also this policy around support, and it will not be in the amendment. And so I think it's a separate issue. So I think we need to be able to respond in an informed way to the amendment itself. And I think I'm speaking for at least the folks on this committee when I say we have a very real concern that once the amendment is finished, our recommendations may be completely ignored, right? And so what do we do about that? And I think, you know, that's where we're trying to figure out, is a resolution enough? It doesn't have any teeth. And so how do we actually get a commitment? Yeah. Go ahead.
Co-chair, so I have our hand raised, and I know you're finishing your statement. First, I want to say, Dr. Reed, I appreciate what you just said, because those are some very relevant points. Also, to your particular point, co-chair, is that, and I'm kind of asking this to you, and I'm asking this also to Jean-Paul, is there a way that in this resolution that we put some type of timetable in it, like you will check in with us every 2 years to make sure that the next iteration, and there's kind of like a process, the next iteration of amendments, so to speak, when they're due, is addressed, that we will address them at this particular time, but some type of timetable that's put in, because I think from what I got from what's the name, Donna's presentation, was that, you know, this seems more like, the amendment seems more like we're coming out of COVID and I'm responding to that right now. But after that has been addressed, and the next time we're looking at amendments and COVID and we have data and stuff like that is not the priority, it's more of how children are doing and us meeting the goals that's in there. You know, can we make sure that they have a timetable or something in there where we're looking at those things differently? Because in 2 years, this is going to be totally almost like different. And that's what I want to know, is there some way that in this resolution, or whatever form it takes, is that we're making sure that first they're accountable to the things that we have there, but also that we're addressing the issues that are happening in those time period. And we want this to happen on a regular basis, not just, you know, next time you come to us in 2 years, that's it.
Thank you for that. I also just wanted to clarify something about the ongoing engagement around the report card. And I think it's a misunderstanding a little bit to say that, you know, if OSCE committed to addressing our recommendations, that would mean that the report card is pre-baked. Because the thing is, what we're concerned with is we, you know, as it says in the letter, these recommendations are not pulled out of thin air. They're based on input. And so what we are expecting is that it's a starting point for engagement, right? We do not want OSCE just doing their separate engagement as if these recommendations didn't exist. That's the problem. And it's kind of what we saw happen, honestly, with the amendment, I think. But granted, I think, okay, I'll take that back. They did really work on the growth. And so that is in there. But because a lot of the recommendations, because we're really thinking what the accountability framework will be, I think, you know, it's hard to fit it into how OSCE is doing it with the amendment. Therefore, I think this is precisely why we're asking for a commitment, is so that these recommendations don't become sort of sidelined and then there's, you know, engagement around a completely different way of thinking about this. Does that make sense? I see two hands, but I don't know if they are new hands or old hands.
Mine's new.
Okay, go ahead.
Mine is not lowering.
Okay, go ahead, Ruth.
All right, so I have a few things, but let me start with where you ended, because I think that's right, that part of what we want for OSSI to do is to start the engagement where we left off, because we did a lot and it shouldn't be just shunted aside. So one question I have, and let me say one other thing, which is the reason we're in this position, and it's important, is OSSI decided to structure this in this way. They did not have to say, we need to bring an amendment in August and everything else will follow. They didn't have to say that. John Paul, are you saying they did have to say that?
Yeah, I do. I think they did. And I think the reason being for that is because of the requirement for US Ed to approve the amendment. That has to happen first before the technical guide and the report card can be done. I mean, it's the logical progression of how the things work.
But it didn't have to be, well, but you could have done all the engagement earlier and then put forward an amendment with some ideas about how you're going to do the rest. I don't know.
Not really, though, because I mean, what happens if US Ed, I mean, if let's just say this amendment was perfect, we all loved it, we loved everything in it, and US Ed says, nah, I don't like this part, I don't like this part, I don't like this part, and you've already then designed a report card over something that US Ed hasn't approved. So, I mean, you have to do the amendment first, get the approval, and then build from there.
I don't know. That's I find it hard to believe that it's that rigid, but maybe it is.
But that's the way it was done beforehand when we did it, when it was initially implemented. We first did that part, the amendment, we submitted that for approval, and then we went back and designed a report card, because that's how I came to be on the task force. The actual, what we were putting forth, our framework was already approved by the time we started working on a report card.
Right, that's true. By the way, let me just think about this. I think that believe that in that first amendment that we did, there was it included the agreement on the star rating, if I'm not mistaken. Do you recall, John Paul? I mean, I think that was part of what was in the amendment.
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry.
That the original thing we voted on, the original ESSA proposal, the equivalent of what this phase's amendment included the star rating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's part of the accountability framework. Yeah.
Well, but so then it seems like.
But not the display.
Well.
No, I mean it just wasn't part of the statewide accountability.
Well, it said that we were gonna. I mean, it said there would be a rating. And
right.
So we could just as easily say there won't be a rating. That there won't be a
right. But
I'd like to see the language. I mean, it'd be interesting to look at what the language is.
Yeah, that's still different than the display, though.
Why is it relevant? I'm sorry, I'm just
saying the amendment could say this information will not be.
Oh, I see.
I'm trying to use not the word display. It will not be reported in a way that suggests that it reflects the quality of a school, and it will not be reported in a way that suggests it is of equal weight to the other indicators that are weight. In other words, it could just pick up that language and it could say that in the amendment.
Yes, I mean, yes, but, and I apologize, I don't mean to keep stepping in and before members do, but I mean, yes, but the federal government doesn't have authority over the form and content of a report card. So OSSI putting that in there would provide the U.S. Department of Ed sort of the approval over something that isn't in their approval. And so I doubt very much that they would be willing to do that, because it would remove the decision making from the state level and give it to the US Ed. And
Okay, but John Poe, if that's the case, we are agreeing that it is a decision that could be made now. It doesn't have to wait for a further level of engagement or the decision on the report card. They could simultaneously put forward an amendment that said what's going to be an amendment and a official thing that said, and we are not going to report this in a way that suggests this is quality. They could do that.
They could. And I think that goes back to my original statement, which they won't do that.
But you're saying that part of the reason they won't is because they're required to do the engagement. But what we've just established is that particular thing doesn't have to be part of the engagement. That is something they could say now, just as last time they indicated they would report it.
No, the exact opposite.
So Ruth, if from what I'm understanding and wanting this particular type of verbiage in there, are we actually giving the U.S. Department of Education authority to define that part? Because if you put it in there that way, I definitely hear what John Paul said. It becomes something that they now have authority over, as opposed to what OSSI and we have authority over.
No, what I'm saying is it can be a parallel document. So we're not giving the feds the right to rule in favor of it or against it. But what I'm saying is precedent suggests that OSSI is in a position to make a decision about that now. It's not something that has to wait until everything else is done.
Okay, let's put that on hold. I think Dr. Rita's had her hand up for a long time.
Thanks. So I say like we find the sections of the amendment that are like pertain to what we're asking for and see like, you know, states that might have some of the things that we are requesting, how they addressed it in their sections of the amendment. I'm also all for like pushing and making sure that like, you know, voices are heard. I also want to make sure that we're doing this effectively as possible. In experience at OSSI and at federal side, OSSI has to factor in when they're submitting their plan, how they engage related to the public. So basically any public engagement related to any of the comments, because right now, like the clock is ticking on, like it's already posted on their site. The clock is ticking for public, like they have to say, we received comments from, you know, X amount of people. This is how we address this in the plan. I'm wondering if that can be a leverage of, are people actually going on the OSSI site, or can we rally people, I don't know, to like go on the site and actually provide feedback on the amendment, so that, because OSSI has to go to the feds and say like, we received 5 comments that said that, you know, I don't know, I'm gonna use, because I know statewide use of assessment, you know, is in there, and this is how we addressed it, or this is why we couldn't address it because that comment was not appropriate. So I wonder, I am all for like, you know, how can we push to make sure OSSI is following what we are recommending? But I think it's most effective is like we're using the process to like what, because if we provide feedback that's not relevant to the current step that we are on, it's a waste of time. So I think we need to figure out how do we, like, and if it's Ruth, we using that language that you're recommending, we can actually find the page and provide recommendations of, you know, this is where we can insert this, or this is what you wrote, you know, and this is why it doesn't fit our recommendations. I think is very strong. I think we could even maybe even submit to the OSSI email or a link or something like that that says like, here are all our page number feedback related to, you know, I think that is helpful.
In other words, submit formal comments on the existing amendment.
Yes, because they have
I think that's a good idea.
It's on the public record. OSSI has to submit to Ed, did they or did they not take these recommendations? And often having been on the backside of it, it's one person, it's often like a student who's doing a graduate school assignment who submitted, you know, like they're not even getting high numbers. They get high numbers on the face engagement, but we're not getting high numbers on documentation. So a lot of times how the public might be feeling actually gets put to the wayside because it's not documented how Ed is expecting it to be documented.
But what about then things like how the rating is, or whatever they come up with, the score is displayed, you're saying just deal with that now?
I said we find where it is in the amendment. Like, so I mean, right now I'm on page, and I'm not far. It's 200, and in the red line edition is 121 pages, and I'm just going down. Right now I'm in the section talking about park. They scratched out park. They write statewide assessment. I'm like, okay, that's a step. But like I haven't got to the part yet about display, meaningful differentiation, right? Is that the term? So like I think we really need to look at this doc. I have a question about why they said only once in high school would the statewide assessment be administered. They scratched that out and they just said in high school. I have a question about that. So I think like we really need to leverage our time. We only have less than a month to like go into this document and see, does it match what we truly want, or or can we'll have other states submit it and that look like whatever we're trying to display, and how did they write around it too.
So maybe the task of this committee then is to go through, read thoroughly, and help the rest of the, at least our members and our constituents, to know where relevant sections are that they might be interested in weighing in on. Because I think it's hard otherwise to ask people to do it, John Paul, do you have a hand up, or is that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to step on members if they have comments, so I can step back at the end. I wanted to reiterate, I ended up putting in the chat too about asking OSSI to put a timeline or sunset clauses in the amendment. There are absolutely precedents for that, for us to do that and say, you must come back to the state board with a proposal for XYZ by X time. I think that's a really great way as well of saying, like, we are committed to these things, like having high school growth and making sure that this actually happens. And even too, for some of the school climate, like saying you need to come back with us with, some sort of ideas for this. I think the challenge is going to be whether or not we can also get them to reserve points for those types of things. Hi, kitty cat. Right? Like, and I think that's the piece that is going to be interesting. And I think this is one of the things that, and Ruth, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you fought really hard, and rightfully so, to reserve points for that high school growth back in the original amendment, or in the original STAR framework, so that there was like, we didn't have to recalculate everything. Like there was a particular amount of points ready for that high school growth. And I think it's very frustrating that we still don't have it. But I think that's one of the things too. I also wanted to note, I did email all the members of the committee the draft language that I was talking about. And I think it hits exactly what Ruth was talking about in her edits to the letter, as well as getting somewhat what we're talking about. Now, I think there's the toothless resolution piece is very accurate, but that's all the authority we have, right? We have approval authority or denial, and that's it. We don't have the ability, we can't amend the document on the dais. The only thing that we can change or adjust is our resolution. And so I think one of the things that I think is a really good idea from that I've heard today is making sure that we review the plan very specifically, provide that specific feedback to OSSI prior to the July working session so that they understand where we are on all of these items, and then be able to look for those in the final version. If they're not there, then I think, there's a lot of things to discuss at that point. But, if we've provided comments and reasons and based on the engagement that we've already done on why we think certain things are the way that they are, I think it's really important.
Sorry, I just, go ahead, Ruth.
So is this an option to, I like the idea of, weighing in on the actual amendment, and the public has an opportunity to weigh in on that amendment. So, one thing is to have people testify, maybe even next week, on that amendment. I didn't realize until last night that actually the amendment was available. So, we could get that out and try to generate some comment on it. And then if I'm following what you're saying correctly, John Paul, what you're saying is that we could say that we can't support this amendment until we see how they're going to revise it based on the comments. Is that?
So part of the thing that we've been, so OSSI is required to send us the public comment as well prior to a vote. So we also have the ability to look through it with, their reasonings behind all those things. Well, I say required. We say they are required to do so. They don't necessarily believe that exactly, but I think it is definitely something that the state board should, in its talks with OSSI leadership, say, when you come in July, we expect to see XYZ. Now, the challenge there, right, is that the public comment ends July 8th. Our working session is July 1st, or your working session, I guess. Your working session. I'm gonna have to work on
I
that.
think that's right. Is it
So,
July, work session is the 6th?
it's the 6th?
Yeah.
That's very, okay, so July 6th. So it's still 2 days before public comment ends. So we will ask them to be able to send, up to X date, the public comment, but they're not going to be able to send all of it to us until, we're preparing for the public meeting, which is fine in one way. But I also think it's a little late to be asking people to review a 120-page document and come to public comment before the board next week. But we can certainly do that too. I mean, we can make a request out to the public and the things.
Or what about saying that we can't, but the vote would be after all the comment was in.
Yeah, no, it has to be. It's required, yeah.
I mean,
Am I following you right, John Paul? You're saying we would be asking people to come testify on a document that is in process? Is that the problem? Because people haven't fully weighed
No,
in?
I'm just saying we as an agency are a little late if we're asking the public to come tell us what they think about the amendment, if we're asking them, effectively 2 business days before, and sign up closes Monday, right? Like,
and I also want to point out for this process, and it kind of sucks, but like people doing public comment for us is not the OSSI official record. So we need to be sending people to public comment. That email that I put there, that's where people our OSSI will have to respond to the comments they'll receive through that channel. And I'm not sure there's other channels on their website. So people can, it's helpful for folks to hear on our end, but that's not OSSI's official record. So just want to lay that out there.
Right. Yeah, no, that's
so when they come back after all this, so there's the comment, they respond, when they come back to us at the July meeting, they've responded to the comments. At that point, we could say, here's, 1 or 2 or 10 ways in which we don't think the comments are responded to. We can't approve it at this point. Please bring it back to us in August. Right?
yes, except for there's not a scheduled meeting in August. We could just schedule one, right? But
We could schedule one, or we could say September. I'm just saying one option for us is to sort of see how the comments have been addressed and
Yep.
say if they're inadequate, that we can't support it.
Yeah, and I think too, I would note that if it is pushed to August, September, that also then pushes off the consideration of the report card and those types of things probably until later spring, which may frankly be better because it would allow new board members the opportunity, a couple extra months to actually be involved in that process a little bit more. Maybe that's not a great idea. I don't know, but I'm just noting in terms of timelining.
Would that also impact OSSI's ability or the timeline in terms of getting this done so that we wouldn't have stars?
I think they'll probably say so. Whether or not that's true or not, I think really does depend on US Ed, which, also depends on the election. Like they may try to get a bunch of things finished and approved before the end of the calendar year before a new Congress comes in.
Yeah. Do you know, like, if we don't vote, if we vote no on this, does it default back to just the way things were? Or is it just like, here are recommendations and then come back?
If the state board votes it down, we will have STAR for at least another year.
Got it. Okay. Carleen, do you still have your hand up or is that from before?
Oh, Dan.
Okay. Okay, I want to, we do have a couple of other items to discuss, so.
Wait, can I,
wanna
wait,
wrap-
I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Because,
yeah, I was gonna, okay.
well,
go
yeah, I
ahead.
mean, part of, and I guess I'm just confused here. So part of what I thought we established before is that the original amendment. Wait a minute, let me think about this. I mean, does the amendments have a requirement for how things get reported or not? Because if it doesn't, then OSSI could just determine not to show the stars without that being amended. I guess that's a question I have.
So, sorry, Dr. Kasoy, did you want to answer that?
Well, I think that's right, right? I mean, that's the whole point, is that that is the next phase of engagement, and they are ostensibly, you know, asking the public, what do you want? I mean, I think what they have conveyed to us is there's a calculation and they feel like it's important to display that somewhere. And so what the engagement is going to be around is where and how. And what I think we're saying, just to bring things back, is do not ignore our recommendations in that engagement so that you come up with a completely different outcome, because it should be at least somewhat based on this floor that we've created. So I think that's where we are. They don't, yeah, it's a separate piece, right? Is that what you were asking, Ruth?
No, I'm saying something else. I mean, one
Okay.
question is whether or not, I mean, there's multiple parts of this, right? But one question is, if we don't vote on the amendment, John Paul just said, if we don't vote in favor of the amendment, we're stuck with the star rating for another year. And my question is that true? Or does OSSI have the ability administratively to
Oh.
stop showing the stars because that's not a required part of the amendment? That's what I'm trying to.
Okay, that's a great question. Yes, John Paul.
That's a really nuanced question, but I think you're absolutely hitting it on nail on the head there, Ruth. I mean, so if the state board votes down the amendment, then what we have is the current structure, which is STAR framework. So they would have to calculate the summative score, and I mean, so they would have to follow their current existing processes, which means the same report card, the same destruction, you know, the same way of
Not report card, because we already said that's a totally separate thing.
Well, no, it is, but what I'm saying is, like, they won't be doing revisions to the report card unless the amendment is passed. So everything is going to look the same.
Exactly. Exactly. I don't think we're really taking this into consideration as we do this, but if we don't pass that resolution in some form or fashion, we are going to be stuck with the same one. And I bet you all bets are off, and they can do whatever they choose at that particular point. They can use the stars again for the next report card, whatever they want to. They don't even have to start engaging again for the redesign. So we need to think this through very smartly and be kind of collaborating in this endeavor, or we do what we end up in the end. If we vote it down, it's the same report card, the same exact report card, more than likely, because they have no reason to change it.
So are we landing on, we as a committee are digging into the OSSI amendment. We are giving our comments and helping our fellow board members to do the same, and encouraging our constituents to as well. And not sending a letter. Is that right? Are we agreeing on that? But using some of the points or all of the points in the letter in a resolution to make public what our expectations are. Does that sound right?
That sounds about right.
Any other quick thoughts or questions, concerns before we move on? Is that an old hand, Ruth?
It's an old hand, yeah.
Okay. All right, then. Onward. So can we put a date on it actually, just for ourselves? Like, and how do you want to touch base? I guess I'll email everyone offline and we'll figure out how. I think we should touch base again on our reading of the amendment. So maybe would next Wednesday work? I mean, time is of the essence, obviously. So Monday, Wednesday.
The ask is what, to review the doc and reconvene?
Yeah, and we can reconvene on or offline. I just think we should kind of touch base on what our thoughts are and how we want to sort of guide the rest of the board. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I know Monday evening, I'm with the student advisory group.
All right, I'll email folks tonight.
Okay.
Okay. Can we actually, so the next item was well-rounded education research, but could we actually skip to budget because it's a little more pressing and I want to make sure we get to it. So in the admin meeting this week, I was reminded that we do need to spend money if we're going to. Otherwise, it goes away in October. And so our committee had proposed doing some public engagement around the report card and just thinking about, you know, the end of the school year and getting stuff done before October. Probably early September would be, or sometime in September would be the only time we would be able to do that. So, so I just wanted to put that out there. And actually, Darren, could you remind us what we asked for? Do you have that?
Yes, for
Oh, you put it in there. Thanks. I saw that. I mean, I didn't see that.
for the well-rounded study.
No, so we weren't asking for money for that for this fiscal year, right? That's for next fiscal
Yeah,
year.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
That's okay.
The
I
first
was
part, pulling it up.
so I guess my question for the committee is, do we definitely we do want to do engagement, right? Around the report card. I just want to make sure we're coordinating with OSSI. I guess, you know, ideally this would be in partnership on some level and not like two separate streams, but it's hard to plan that right now, I guess. So what we can do is just commit to some dates and then flesh it out between now and then. So I guess what I'm proposing is that we choose a date in September and then figure out how we want to do that engagement. And I guess I'm also going to defer now to Darren and maybe to, is it Alex that I would be talking to about this, because you'll be the one kind of having to manage, you know, what engagement would, like what capacity staff had at that point to do engagement or any obstacles we might meet. I know, John Paul, you had mentioned something about the, what is it called? Like the card being frozen in September or something. So I don't know how much of an obstacle that is and if that's prohibitive or what does that mean for us? Does it just mean we have to plan more in advance, or is it something we shouldn't do?
We have to plan and pay in advance, and then we would need to receive everything by a particular date. I don't think we've received the specific shutdown dates yet, but it's usually by, you know, September 15th-ish, maybe to September 20. So before that is always better if we can, but you know, I know that's also challenging. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I would encourage the committee to talk with leadership about, or ask them to bring up to the OSSI leadership team specifically, and like, okay, so what is your plan for engagement on report card? Like, we're coming to the end stretch of the amendment piece, hopefully. What is the plan for the engagement? How do we do this? What are the things that we can do together? We'd really like to do this as collaboratively as possible, so that we don't have those two separate streams type things. I mean, the other option, and what we've done in the past, I think we did some of this, is ask them to at least at the sort of bare minimum, let us know the dates for everything, and then we will at least send someone to go to hear it too, to hear the information, right? Like, that's what we kind of did for this last series of things. I feel like that was a good start minimum, but like, we would rather be participants in this process, not just sitting there listening, I think.
Yeah. Any thoughts on why we might not do engagement? Otherwise, I think we should just choose a date. And Jacques and I can kind of work on that with staff if you want.
Can I just ask, so we would be setting a date to engage on the report card, but we don't even know yet what OSSI's doing on it? So we're just going back to what we just did? I feel like I'm missing a beat here.
Well, I guess what I'm proposing is that we have a date because we have to get the logistics set because of, spending money, getting a place reserved. And then we would need to fill in sort of what the engagement is. So at least we would have the logistics in place, and then the content would come next. Yeah. So it's a little awkward, but I think if we waited, we won't be able to do it, is the issue. John Paul?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think depending on the conversations with the superintendent and with others, like, we could start even planning a couple different ways of doing this, right? If we're, part of what we need to know is, are we doing one big event, or are we doing multiple events around the city, right? Is it something that we're asking each member to do a little event in their wards, or are we doing some big thing? I mean, we could conceivably do sort of like a welcome back to school. Also, we're kicking off engagement for a report card, right? Like, we could do a bigger type thing, and by planning it now and getting it on people's calendars, people will be ready for it. But I think that's the piece, the sort of basic logistics are the things that we need to sort of, or you need to start deciding somewhat soon in terms of what we're going to work on, or what it's going to be. But I think to Bruce's point, I think this is the challenge, right? Is that because we don't know exactly what the engagement's going to look like, I think we need to figure out from our point of view what we would like to see, at least at the beginning of this process. Because if I remember right, there is a timeline in the PowerPoint that we got from OSSI about their engagement, and I think it says supposed to start in the fall, right, and go through spring. So really, this timelining really would be sort of a kickoff event type thing. So we may not have a whole lot of information to share, but it might be a way to start getting some buzz around how people can participate in the report card review revision process, like that type of thing.
And in a way, maybe it's how we keep our recommendations in the public ear.
But to the extent that people engage with us and not OSSI, it's kind of like it doesn't count, sort of like this. I mean,
no, I would say that I would want it to be, I would encourage us to try to do everything we can to make it a joint event, right? Like have Dr. Grant there. I mean, maybe it's one of the things too that we can even, bring in some things about, last minute vaccinations for kids, or do some sort of like, I don't know. I don't think we necessarily need to do a big like, the My School DC big thing. Like, we don't want to, necessarily do it like a carnival, but like have ways of encouraging people to be there that aren't just sort of talking at them, but also letting them know that these are the things that are coming and they're really important, and this is why they're important.
Do you think, I guess I'm wondering why OSSI would be collaborative around this engagement when they weren't at all with the last engagement? Is that a,
I don't know that I would say that they weren't collaborative at all, right? Like they did have the engagement. They did keep us there. You know, we did go to all the meetings. They didn't like try to force us out of them or anything like that. But I think we have a better track record of being able to engage authentically with residents. And don't we want to use that power to help OSSI get to that too? So
absolutely. I guess I'm saying, I mean, yes, we were able to sit in, but that's not collaboration. And this sounds more like something.
well,
A joint thing. I mean, it would be great. Yes, I would like that. But I think it would be much more productive.
yeah, I think it's something to propose to them and see if they'll bite, right? And if they don't, then fine, then it's us, and we'll provide you with the information. But like we will prepare this thing. Our small and mighty staff of, let's see, I guess at that point, hopefully we'll be back to 6 people. We'll do all the logistics. All you have to do is show up and be there and talk, and we'll show you how engagement actually is supposed to work.
But can I just say, we just did that and it has no effect. I think it's very hard to keep inviting people back to engage with us and we can't, but it doesn't.
What do you mean by had no effect?
We just went through a year of engagement around ESSA. We came up with a set of recommendations that were unanimous, and we're being told that doesn't count. It all has to start over again.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone has ever said that it has to start over again. The engagement on the amendment was very productive, and I think a lot of the recommendations that the committee came up with for SR 22-1 that were related to the amendment are in the proposal. The next stage we haven't gotten to yet.
I agree.
Well, I guess I'm a little lost. Okay. I mean, part of what we started out with is the amendment, at least the slides, to Carlene's point. I haven't read the amendment, didn't know there was the amendment. The slides did not reflect what our engagement had produced in terms of the resolution.
I mean, I kind of have to disagree. I mean, I think, the fact is that the SR 22-1 was pretty clear that we did not want to have a summative rating, and OSSI said, okay, we feel like we still have to have a score, but like a rating we are not going to do. They're adding
John
in.
Paul, I'm sorry. Now you're taking a position on this that frankly is inappropriate, because people on this committee have said multiple times, I believe everybody here, that it's a little bit of gamesmanship what they're doing there. So to say that they listened to it, I think is really, you can have that point of view, but it is definitely a point of view.
And Ruth, I have to push back because I think, having an opinion is okay. It's not that he's putting something, like he's making a statement that, one way or the other. So I always want to hear from John Paul when he wants to provide advice or even an opinion. And secondly, I actually do agree that we did get a lot of what we wanted. We didn't get everything we wanted so far, but we got a lot of things. It informed what they brought back to us, particularly around growth. And that was one of your biggest issues, was around growth. So I got to push back a little bit on that.
Growth.
I got to push back on that because, we put some things forth and, we said we didn't want stars. Everybody has agreed.
No, we didn't. We didn't just say we didn't want stars. That's why I wanted. We didn't want a summative score.
We said we didn't want a summative rating. We all do that. Okay, you're right. Yeah. We did say we didn't want a summative score, and that's the one where I didn't vote for. But that is part of it, and they explained why they're going to have a summative score and not a summative rating. And so I think we informed them a lot on what our engagement was, and it came out in their amendments and responding to our recommendations. And that's why I think it's incumbent on us, because we have to truly understand we can want a lot of things, but the way that we are structured as an organization right now, we don't have the leverage to make them do anything.
No, I understand. I totally understand that. And the question is, how far do we just go along with it nonetheless. So anyway, I guess I thought we had agreed more about the extent to which there was unhappiness about showing that score. But anyway, we can move on. My only point was there's a discussion about that, but I don't want to belabor that.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, we get that we don't agree. It's just that we need to channel all of this in the right way. And just saying that we're not going to, like, we can discredit ourselves equally by not getting into the document. And like, so we just making sure that we're, again, I'm all for a push, I'm all for a fight, I'm all for saying that maybe like it doesn't reflect what I fully want. But I'm like, just saying that is not conducive to like what we actually leverage, which is getting into this document and saying like, okay, other states said this when that match what our recommendations are. So I just want to make sure like we're doing it as effectively as possible. And I appreciate like you advocating, making sure like the recommendation that we have stand up. But I need to also make sure we can get undermined in processes if we're not also playing the game of we are in this document and we're saying.
No, I just want to say, I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. I was on the next round of the engagement. So I just got that.
Okay, so where are we landing? Yes, on going forward with booking something and then figuring out what it is in terms of content and forming content, but we'll at least have a space and staff ready to help. And then we can also ask other committees if they want to join and do something like we did last time, or if this is just A&A. I guess some of that will depend on whether we're doing like one big thing or doing ward level things. John Paul.
If I can make a suggestion, maybe it would be helpful for the committee chairs to have a sort of proposal of what a couple different scenarios would be for that engagement for the next meeting of the committee. That way there's something tangible to look at. And I'm, on my last couple hours in the office, I can certainly volunteer some staff time for that.
Is today your last day?
Yes, ma'am. About 3 more hours.
Oh my God. All right. Well, we are honored that you joined our meeting. So can we, before we leave, nail down a time to come back with comments to read through and come back with comments? Can we, it doesn't have to be a meeting. We can just like do this in a shared document or something, but can we commit to, can you guys read it this weekend and come back on Monday evening or Tuesday morning?
Or at least have comments to you by Monday evening or Tuesday morning. Yeah, I can.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like not getting through the whole document, just like what you can get through. Yeah. I will say pages 1 through 19 cover nothing about what we just talked about so far. So if you want to jump below that.
Yeah, I mean, do your best, skim through the.
I appreciate that, Dr. Reed, and I can commit to being yes because I want to know a little bit more as well. I have not read it. I'll admit to that, but I do want to be a little bit more informed as we talk about it in our general meeting.
Okay, so let's commit to Tuesday morning and then go from there. Sound good?
Yeah.
And then, okay, and then Jacques and I will chat and come up with a couple of scenarios for engagement and send an email about that and get your input. And if folks can stay 5 more minutes, I know Darren had an update on well-rounded education pre-research with Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Thanks for coming and thanks for agreeing to work on this. So Darren, did you want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. Just pulling up this quick document.
Oh, you shared.
So yeah, we discussed one of the facets of accountability, and part of SR 22-1 was this well-rounded education component or metric, and just looking into that for future iterations. And so part of the plan, as we discussed, is doing a quick literature review of what is out there, like what research is out there on students' access to well-rounded education. And so putting together a literature review that answers two questions. One would be, what were the methodologies for these studies? How did they collect data on students' access to well-rounded education? And what were the results and recommendations from these reports? But the through line would be the methodology of how to collect that data. And then using this literature review to help inform the scope of work for fiscal year 2023, like a vendor or a researcher digging deeper into students in DC's access to well-rounded education. And this would lend itself to further discussions with OSSI on including this in a future accountability framework, the report card, but just accurately and reliably standardizing well-rounded education metrics in DC. So this literature review, Kevin is going to take lead on this, starting mid-June, like around June 13th to July 15th, just going out there, pulling together what literature review we have, and then presenting it to the committee. We're thinking about 6 to 8, looking at 6 to 8 studies or synthesizing 6 to 8 studies. That's the gist of it. Are there any questions or thoughts on this?
I guess I would just say to you, and you may already have thought of this, but if it's possible to look at district level, we're really a district. So state level would not be at, like, smaller studies would be more relevant, I think, to us than like a regular state level one, unless it does seem like something we could do here. But my sense is we are going to have, we're a district and we are going to have a small budget. And so smaller studies, even at the school level, you know, if we're looking at methodology, might be more useful to us.
Yeah, that's helpful. I did make a note to use both school district and state level in the original proposal. I'll make a note to try to focus on district level. I think we'll take a look also. I mean, we'll really try to focus on as close to what DC's, like, structurally what we could have in place and what that would look like at district level. But I think at a state level, I mean, this is, from what I understand, studies like these are fairly new, so it will be like difficult. It will be easier to find at school district level. So yeah, point taken.
Okay.
In some, point taken.
And whatever you can find too. I mean, if there's something that's relevant, then that's great. But it just, yeah, just to keep that in mind that our scale is small. Any other questions or thoughts on that? And so would you be presenting that at our July or August meeting? What are your thoughts?
I think August, more likely.
Okay. And just super quick, one other thing I wanted to mention is that I did talk with Darren about doing a memo on support, what other states are doing around, you know, including support in their accountability, either including in the framework or just how they then respond to the results from their framework. And so, Darren, you said you're going to start work on that at the end of this month. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So that's something that also will be coming our way this summer. So that's awesome. All right. That's all I have. Was there anything else? Is this your last committee meeting, John Paul? Uh-huh, all right. I hope you enjoyed it. All right, well, good to see everyone, and we'll be in touch, for real. Okay, good stuff. Bye. Yeah, enjoy.
Bye.